Imagine spending over $100,000 on a truck, driving it off the lot, feeling like you made a smart decision, like you bought something powerful, reliable, something that would hold its value. And then just a couple years later, it's worth half of what you paid for it. Not because you crashed it, not because you abused it, but because something quietly changed underneath the surface. And the worst part, most people don't even realize it's happening until it's too late. Right now, there's something strange going on in the truck market. On the surface, everything looks normal. Trucks are more popular than ever. Prices keep going up. Dealerships are still pushing fully loaded models that cost as much as luxury cars. And buyers, they're still lining up, thinking they're making a solid long-term purchase. Because for years, trucks had this reputation. They were the safe option. You could buy one, drive it for years, and still get a decent chunk of your money back. But that idea, it's starting to fall apart. Because when you actually look at what's happening to some of these high-end trucks, that's where things get interesting. And in some cases, that's where things get really expensive. The illusion. For a long time, trucks were different. Sedans lost value fast. Luxury cars dropped like rocks. But trucks, they held strong. People believed they were practical, durable, always in demand. And for a while, that was true. But something started to change. Manufacturers began pushing trucks into a completely different category. They weren't just work vehicles anymore. They became luxury vehicles, status symbols, tech-packed machines. Suddenly, you weren't just buying a truck. You were buying heated and ventilated leather seats, massive touchscreens, premium sound systems, advanced driver tech, and of course, a price tag that kept climbing higher and higher and higher. $60,000 turned into $80,000. $80,000 turned into $100,000, and in some cases, even more. And that's where the problem started. Because while prices were rising, the fundamentals didn't change. And eventually, reality started catching up. The future that didn't hold. It usually starts with something exciting, a truck that feels like the future, something new, something different, something everyone is talking about, like the electric revolution. When electric trucks first hit the market, they weren't just vehicles, they were statements. And one of the biggest names behind that shift was the Ford F-150 Lightning. At first, it looked like the perfect evolution. Take America's best-selling truck, turn it electric, add cutting-edge features, and price it like a premium product. Fully loaded versions were pushing close to $100,000, and people bought them because it felt like a safe bet. It's an F-150, right? How could that go wrong? But then something happened. Ford started adjusting prices. Newer models came out cheaper. Technology improved faster than expected, and suddenly, the truck that once felt cutting edge started feeling outdated. Not old, but not new either. And when that happens in the auto market, value drops fast. 3 years later, some of those high-end models were selling for nearly half of what they originally cost. Not because they were bad trucks, but because the market moved on, and the early buyers, they paid the price. But electric trucks aren't the only ones. Sometimes, the biggest losses come from hype, because hype does something dangerous. It convinces people that something will hold value, just because everyone wants it right now. And there's no better example of that than the Ram 1500 TRX. When it launched, it didn't just enter the market, it dominated attention. Supercharged V8, 700+ horsepower, aggressive styling. It wasn't just a truck, it was an event. Dealers couldn't keep them in stock. People were paying over MSRP, sometimes tens of thousands over. A $90,000 truck suddenly became a $110,000 purchase, and buyers justified it because it felt rare, special, something that would always be in demand. But hype doesn't last forever, and when it fades, reality sets in. Fuel costs, limited buyer pool, expensive maintenance, and suddenly, that $100,000 plus truck isn't as easy to sell. Prices started dropping, then dropping faster, and for many owners, especially those who paid markups, the real loss wasn't just depreciation, it was amplified. Some ended up losing close to half of what they invested in just a few years. Then you have another category, the ones that don't look risky at all. The ones that feel safe because they're not extreme, they're not experimental, they're just fully loaded. Take heavy-duty trucks. For a long time, these were seen as some of the most reliable investments in the truck world. Workhorses, built for durability, high demand across multiple industries. But then something changed. Manufacturers started pushing luxury trims to the extreme, and that's where trucks like the Ford Super Duty Platinum and Limited come in. These aren't basic work trucks anymore. They're fully leathered interiors, massive infotainment systems, high-end finishes, premium pricing. We're talking $95,000, $100,000, sometimes more. And at that price, buyers expect value to hold because historically, heavy-duty trucks have done well. But here's the problem: the used market for these trucks doesn't think the same way. Most secondhand buyers aren't looking for massage seats, high-end trims, expensive add-ons. They're looking for utility, capability, function, and they're not willing to pay a premium for features that are now a few years old. So what happens? That extra $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 of luxury gets erased, and fast, leaving owners with losses that feel completely unexpected. Then there are trucks that represent something bigger, a vision, a comeback, a bold statement about the future, and few trucks fit that description better than the GMC Hummer EV pickup. When it launched, it wasn't just a vehicle, it was a headline, a revival of an iconic name, packed with insane features, crab walk, massive horsepower, cutting-edge tech, and a price tag that reflected all of it. $110,000, $120,000, even higher with options. People didn't just buy it, they chased it. Early demand was intense, and for a moment, it felt like these trucks would hold value, maybe even increase. But then production ramped up, supply increased, and the market started to normalize. And when that happens, hype meets reality, and reality always wins. Within a short period, values began dropping sharply. Some owners saw tens of thousands disappear almost immediately, and it exposed something important. Being futuristic doesn't guarantee long-term value, but the most interesting cases are the ones nobody expects. Because when something surprising loses value, it hits differently, and this is where things get even more interesting. Because not all depreciation comes from hype, or tech, or pricing. Sometimes it comes from positioning. Take the Jeep Gladiator. On paper, it makes sense. It combines the rugged appeal of a Wrangler, the utility of a truck, and for a lot of buyers, that sounds perfect, especially in higher trims. Fully loaded versions pushed into the $75,000 to $80,000 range, and people bought into it because Jeep has a reputation, strong resale, loyal fan base, iconic design. But here's the problem: the Gladiator sits in a very specific niche. It's not quite a full-size truck, and not quite a traditional Jeep, and over time, that started to matter. Buyers looking for trucks gravitated toward more practical options. Buyers looking for Jeeps went back to the Wrangler, and the Gladiator got stuck in the middle, started losing value much faster than expected, in some cases nearly half. And for many owners, that wasn't something they ever saw coming. And when you step back and look at all of this together, a pattern starts to appear. Different trucks, different reasons, but the same outcome: massive depreciation. And it comes down to a few key factors. Overpricing. When trucks start pushing into six-figure territory, they're competing with entirely different markets, and those markets behave differently. Hype cycles. What's hot today doesn't stay hot forever, and when demand drops, prices follow. Technology shifts, especially with EVs. What feels advanced now can feel outdated very quickly. And then there's something even simpler: mismatch between what buyers pay up front and what the used market actually values. And when that gap exists, it gets corrected. So what does all of this really mean? It means that the idea of trucks being safe investments isn't as reliable as it used to be, because today's trucks aren't built the same way. They're more expensive, more complex, more dependent on trends, and that changes everything. Because now, you're not just buying a truck, you're buying into a moment, a version of the market that might not last, and when it shifts, the value shifts with it. So the next time you see a $100,000 truck, fully loaded, packed with features, looking like the perfect purchase, just remember, price doesn't always equal value. And sometimes, the most expensive option is the one that costs you the most in the end. Because while these trucks might look like status symbols today, their value tomorrow is a completely different story.